So today we hear the call story of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and also Simon and Andrew. And I wonder how we feel it relating to us in our current condition, how we feel our calls coming to us from God or from other places. The call that I got, one of the calls that I got was I was in the sacristy back in my church that I was serving before I went to seminary, and I was dressed in a black cassock. And I know her name is Julia. She's probably in the mid-80s. She worked in the altar guild. And she said to me, she said, "Peter, you just look good in black." And, I took that as a sign of, maybe the ministry was for me. It was kind of one of these add-ons of things that seem to keep happening and keep pushing me towards this role that I serve now here at St. Margaret's Church. And it's fascinating about Paul because so often it's a persuasion. It's a persuasive call. I want you to do something. How can I persuade you to do something? And I wonder what Jesus' persuasion was like. When he was walking down that road in the Sea of Galilee, what persuasion did he have at his fingertips? Was that one of his divine gifts? Did he just know who to ask and get the right answer from? Did he know who was searching for meaning or who needed direction in their lives? How did he know how to give the words to people? Because the first two, he just says, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." So there's a little add-on there. He tells them essentially what they're going to be doing. And no real specifics necessarily, but he says, "Follow me and this is what's going to happen." In a very general, vague sense. But the next two, for James and John, who are there working with their father in the family business, he says, "Follow me." And immediately, in Mark's Gospel, this is an important word, immediately, they put down their nets and they followed Jesus. And you can imagine what Zebedee and his brothers and the hired men must have thought. You can imagine what they must have thought as they saw the owner's two sons leaving the boat to follow this guy they had never seen before. What was that about? What pull did that man have over them? And of course, what we don't know is we don't know what was inside the sons of Zebedee. We don't know what was inside of Simon and what was inside of Andrew. Most likely there was some sense of longing, some desire for meaning, some aching for connection with something greater, something bigger than themselves. And maybe some of their friends saw it. Jesus definitely picked up on it. And he said to them, and he said, without using these words, "I have what you are looking for. If you follow me, you will find meaning for your life. You will be fulfilled somehow." Now the problem with that is that that's not the way that we're used to persuasion. Those of us who sit in front of TVs and screens all day, we are inundated with advertisements, usually on the order of 10,000 a day, I believe. So 10,000 times a day, we are being persuaded to buy something, to act in a certain way, to think a certain way, to believe a certain way, to speak a certain way, to hear a certain way. We're being persuaded all over. I'm trying to persuade right now to some degree. Right? We are in the persuasion business. But with Jesus, he seemed to cue in on something very, very important. What meaning did people desire for their lives? And again, I think about the fishermen that were left in the boat. And I think about their hands that were mending the nets. And they kept on mending the nets long after James and John and Simon and Andrew had left. And they probably caught many fish, and they were probably well fulfilled. But what did they say no to? Did they say no to the call to fish for men? Did they trade the good for something great? I think about it in my own life, and it's a different call story because I was only 25 years old, but when you're 25, the whole world is in front of you. You've got all these dreams and ideas and visions, and at the time, my dream and idea and vision was to be a high school social studies teacher. And I was going to live in my hometown in a nice house with a picket fence and a wife and kids and a dog, and I was going to coach the soccer team, and my profile would be up in the local Applebee's, and it was just going to be, that was going to be my life. Who else could want anything more? And then the teacher market, there was a huge glut, so I couldn't get hired anywhere, so I started substitute teaching. And any of you who have done substitute teaching know that it is a worthy profession, filled with ample rewards. So I taught for 2 years as a substitute, and my priest that the church that I was at the time, my hometown church, he took me out and he said, have you ever thought about seminary? And I said, not really. Not consciously, maybe subconsciously, but not consciously. He said, because when you're up there serving with me, because I would serve with Mark, and I'd kind of be his right-hand guy, and he said, when you're up there serving with me, I feel like I'm with a brother priest. There's a feeling that I have. I can't put it into words, but I feel like I'm with a brother priest up there. So you might want to think about this. And I said, yeah, but I'm going to be a teacher. He said, you could work for the greatest teacher of all. I said, okay, well, that sounds kind of like a cliche, but I'll just let that ride. So I started to think about it. You could say that I started to pray about it, because I really didn't know how to pray at that point in time. Still have trouble with it. But nothing was happening. There was no lightning bolt, there was no vision in the night, there was no dream, there was no phone call saying, this is God, I'm waiting for you to become a priest. There was nothing like that. And that's what I thought that it would be. I mean, how else would it come? So Mark said, you have to listen to the still small voice. And when that still small voice comes, listen to it. If it woos you, you will try to run from it. Right? And I said, help me understand that. I don't know, if it's a good voice, if this is something that I want to do, why would I run from it? He said, because no good priests go into it without kicking and screaming. This is not something that people like to sign up for. And he was right. In seminary, I was always very wary of the priests who were almost too happy to be there. And it was confirmed to me in the sense that this great bishop who we had in Virginia just recently died, Mark Dyer, he was nominated for bishop 3 times in New England and the Mid-Atlantic. 3 times he was nominated, 3 times he turned them down. He said, I do not want to be bishop. And finally, on the 4th attempt, they convinced him, they persuaded him to serve as bishop. And he said, it was the hardest decision that I had to make because I did not want to do it, but I felt that's what God was calling me to do. Again, you go into it kicking and screaming because it is not all peaches and glory. And I think about this, I mean, there's no better place for me than right here. There's no better place where I'm more comfortable, more stable, more rooted, more grounded than behind that altar right there. That's where I know that I belong. But in discernment and in measuring that call, I always have to ask. I always have to say, God, is this what you're calling me to do? And when we enter those conversations with our God with whom we tremble with fear and awe, when we ask God, what would you have me do? Sometimes the answer is very frightening indeed. Sometimes the answer comes, I want you to do something that's very, very difficult. I want you to do something that you're not going to want to do. I'm going to want you to do something that is going to take you out of your comfort zone, that's going to gain you enemies. I'm going to ask you to do something that will pain you, that will cost you something. And those are typically the hardest calls to answer. It's easy to get a call, to go give the breakfast invocation at the Miss America breakfast, which is what I did in 2004. That was a very easy call to decision. Can you do this for me, Peter? Yes, God, I can. It's a much harder call to do marriage counseling with a good friend on a Monday night at 11 o'clock at night. But you know that's what you're called to do. It's much harder to take and bear the ashes of people who have known and loved down this aisle to be buried, gripping them in my arms, realizing that the strength that I'm holding that urn with is the very strength that you all have given me. That's a difficult call to answer. For you, what is the call that you've been avoiding? Where has God been whispering in your dreams, in the music you hear? Where is God calling you to step out of your comfort zone and be a little unsure? Where is God calling you to risk certainty and to risk the knowledge that everything will be all right, trusting only in God? And the Psalm 62 reminds us God is our rock and our stronghold, so that we shall not be shaken. These calls that we answer, these are what propel us into ministry. And these calls become great when we answer them. And when we say, yes, God, I will go forth. I will proclaim your word through deed and example, using words if necessary. If that is what you call me to do. We all like to be in the spotlight. But God's work is not often done in the spotlight. God's work is done behind the scenes. God's work is done when our hands are pruning. So think about the calls that are calling you outside of where you've been before. You can answer that call here at St. Margaret's Church. Answer it in your communities, in your workplaces, in your world. And know that God will bless it. God is your rock and your stronghold. You will not be greatly shaken. Amen.